Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yeah, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, where we dedicate almost every day of the week to Alaskan issues, things that are happening in our state, politics, woodticks, lunatics, politics, all the things that we like to talk about. All of it right here on the big radio program. It is Hump Day, middle of the week, getting ready for that long downhill slide to Firearms Friday. Today, we have a full raft of guests. Starting off here in hour one, we're going to be talking with Speaker of the House, Cathy Tilton, about elections and their consequences and the majority and what she sees coming up. It's going to be an interesting discussion. And then in hour two, we'll pick that up with State Senator Mike Shower, where we will also talk about the different majorities in the House and the Senate and how that can affect things, and the slimness of some majorities and where things go from there. And then whatever else he and I decide to talk. You know what it's like when we get Shower in here. My gosh, it's like trying to hold down the wind. You know, that guy goes everywhere. So it should be fun. We're going to talk about that here in hour two as well. But without further ado, let's get started here. I see that Cathy Tilton is in the green room eating all my virtual donuts and drinking all my virtual coffee. Leave me the sprinkled ones. That's all I'm saying. Just leave me the sprinkled ones. So let's jump on over there right now and get started. I see her mic is also muted, so let's hopefully she can unmute herself and we can be go. There we go. Look at that. Cathy Tilton joins us this morning. Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. I did leave the sprinkled donuts, but the coffee is amazing.
I know coffee is that virtual coffee. And the best thing about virtual donuts is there's no calories. So it's perfect.
Well, then I'll eat a whole bunch.
It's a guilt-free experience. Absolutely.
Nice
experience. So
that's
Cathy,
definitely what you need after the stress of last session. I need a guilt-free experience with not eating a bunch of donuts.
I tell you what, last session, I don't know how you did it, quite honestly, because it's like I looked at it and I said, that must be like herding cats with a shotgun, because man, it's a lot of pressure, a lot of things going on. Cathy, let's first and foremost, let's just talk about last session, because I don't think you and we haven't talked in quite a while. You've been a bad girl. You don't respond to my texts or emails anymore. But she did which was nice. She did yesterday. So it's been a while. So if you want to give us a brief recap on last session, because there was a lot of stuff happening and there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And I know that several people have called your name out as saying you're the one that kind of held everything together, which is your job as speaker. But, let's talk about, what it was like going through those final days, trying to get that last stuff, trying to get the people wrangled up together. And I mean, you guys didn't even finish at midnight, right? I mean, it was like trying to get everything pulled together. So give us a brief recap of the last session before we move on to the current election cycle.
So I think the last couple of days, you could say that the last couple of days were like a whole year, and when a whole session in 2 days. I don't have the papers in front of me, but the bills going back and forth between the House and the Senate was pretty intense, and especially on the last day, the other body finished their budget and then decided to send some some of the bills over, but they didn't get those bills over to us until fairly late, some of them not coming over till like 10 o'clock at night. So we were really, rushing through to try to get the things that were important, the things that had been promised, off of the docket, but we needed to also pass the budget. That's the number one mandate that we have. So, of course, folks are pretty excited about their own bills. So it was definitely a effort in keeping things going and keeping people with their heads on straight, because it gets pretty crazy, and a lot of new folks who hadn't been through that end of session process before. So it was a lot. And you're right, Michael, we didn't finish at midnight. I was looking for a sine die motion. We got the motion, but didn't have, the votes to sine die. And my goal was that we would sine die out of that legislature with the 21 votes before we walked off the floor, which is what we did ultimately.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was unfortunate because a couple bills passed, which were then summarily not signed by the governor because he was rightly concerned about the constitutionality of it. But it was a lot. It was you were again trying to rustle stuff around there and get things going on. A couple big contentious votes. Obviously, education was the big buzzword. I mean, the whole the whole session started off with a bang. You guys did a lot of early work on the education bill. Surprisingly, I mean, it was like in the first 30 days, you guys had something put together, and that just kind of led to a downhill slide against this whole education thing. People storming the Capitol, yada yada yada. I mean, not storming the Capitol. That was not the right. Sorry, not a January 6th thing. There was people all over the Capitol with signs, and people were upset. And of course, it's become a big campaign issue. But what was your take on this whole thing as you watched it unfold in the House?
The education issue, I'm glad that we did it, because this is the first year that the Republican Conservative Caucus was in control. And over the last 6 years, although we hear our buddies in the minority say how much they care about education and how much they would give their lives for education, I haven't seen anything happen over the last 6 years on education at all. No reforms, no dollars going towards education. So we, heading into the session, had worked with our caucus and some with the administration on some of the items that the governor had wanted to see come forward, and just put forward an education package. And I think it really did mix people up. It really did kind of, it did take over the session, but I'm glad we did it, because there are a lot of reforms that are needed in education. We need to have accountability for the dollars that are being spent out there. Now, ultimately, did we succeed in getting a package through? No, we did not. But I think it was important that conversation was out there. It was had. I believe that every child in Alaska deserves a great education. Ultimately, there needs to be choice, and in the far end down the road, I would like to see the money follow the child, because every child learns differently. So it was definitely mixed up the session. I think that our friends in the other body didn't expect us to come out with something so hard hitting. And I'm glad we did it, and I'm really proud of the work that our team did. Unfortunately, it has been made a campaign issue, especially for those running in the Anchorage area, which is unfortunate, because quite honestly, our team did more for education than has been done over the last 6 years.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, one of the things that got me really hard was the fact that we kept hearing these words and these phrases repeated over and over, and even by the mainstream media, the news media, the ADN and the KTU, the outlets, the mainstream outlets, they kept saying, well, education has been underfunded. It's been flat funded. We've been doing, but we're still, yes, there has not been an increase to the BSA since 2017, but at the same time, every year we give 20, 50, 75, $100 million over the actual, funding formula. And so education wasn't, it was kind of this half truth, right? This half truth of, yes, it's been flat funded on the BSA side, but we're still putting money on the other side. And so that kind of irritated me. And then the fact that some of you, like you said, just wanted some accountability. Okay, we'll give you some more money. Tell us how you're going to use it. Tell us what's going to happen. Show us the metrics of what is going to be accomplished with that, and we'll go ahead and approve it. And they're like, no metrics. You can't, and that's a little frustrating for those of us on the outside who have to perform and show performance to justify expenditures versus something else. And it's not that we're anti-children. It's not that we're anti-education. It's just we want some accountability for the funds that we have accountability. Why shouldn't the legislature?
Absolutely agree 100%. When folks came to my office, I know the cost of doing business. I'm a private business owner myself. So it doesn't fall short on me that there's high costs of energy in Alaska. It doesn't fall short on me that we have healthcare costs that are high healthcare costs. But the bottom line is the private sector doesn't have anybody that comes in and swoops in and just gives them more money so that they can, succeed. So we have to figure out how we can do better with the funding that we have. And you can't, we do have a limited amount of funds coming into our state, and we have to make those funds work for the entire budget. And so, yeah, I agree with you. We need to have some accountability. We need to see our students succeeding and thriving. We need our students to have the opportunity to have choices. I still to this day don't understand what the issue was about charter schools that was so off-putting to the folks in the minority. I will say that through the entire session, the members of the Democrat minority didn't vote for one time. They did not vote for education funding. So how can you go out and say, I would die on my sword for education, but didn't vote for anything in education?
Well, it's your kind of education funding that they support. It's your
Right.
kind, what you want. It's the accountability. It's the charter school. I mean, they're against charter schools because it takes money, in their mind, it takes money away from public schools, even though charter schools are public school. I'm still trying to figure it out, right? It's
I
like
know.
you're trying to break the mold, and they don't like that. A couple other big issues came up. Education obviously sucked all the oxygen out of the room, but the Senate passed a defined benefits bill, and then it languished in the House, luckily, because I think there's a lot of questions around that bill. What are the ultimate costs going to be? Some reports putting it at something like $10 billion over 15 years, which is a significant cost. I know they kept saying it was going to be zero cost, or even I think Cliff Grow even said it was going to save us money in the long run. But that's another one that we're expecting to see come up probably again this year. Give me your thoughts on that real quick. We got about 2 minutes here.
Sure. I'm not against benefits for workers in some kind of retirement benefits, but again, I'm going to go back to I'm a private sector person. I never had anybody come in and swoop in and say that I'm going to fix this retirement plan because that is the reason why you're not able to get employees. There's the retirement that somebody receives in their benefit plan is not the number one reason why employees don't stay working at a company. I think the number one reason that people don't want to be where they're at has a lot to do with the quality of the life that they're receiving. And you're right, Michael. It comes down to show me the dollars. I think that there's other ways that we can adjust the retirement system without indebting the state to the point of bankruptcy. So it is an issue, and it's also a campaign issue. I know the issue will end up coming back. Hopefully we can help people to see that there are other ways of maybe tweaking the retirement system in the defined contribution system that can give the benefits that people are looking for that won't, again, cause an indebtedness to the state.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's an important question because, again, we already know what happened with the prior defined benefits program. And yes, there was some actuarial misconduct and some other things. But the fact is, we still owe $7 billion to that unfunded liability. And so do we really want to add more to that? Or should we just increase the contribution on the defined contribution side? I mean, there's there's a lot of possibilities there for sure. Cathy Tilton is our guest. She's the Speaker of the House on the in the Alaska Legislature. We're going to continue with her here in just a second. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. When we get back, we're going to talk to Cathy about the majority and what it was like and what does it look like coming up. It is an intense race. And there's a lot of money flying around here, millions of dollars for the first time in a lot of these races. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show continues with Cathy Tilton right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Cathy Tilton is our guest. We are in the break right now, and realized my timer didn't work there, so I'm a little bummed here. Come on, timer, you can make it. Here we go. All right. All right, Cathy Tilton, our guest. Cathy, it was watching the legislative session was just like, wow. Well, watching all these people go through this stuff, and the fact that you had to try and corral them all. I know Kevin McCabe said something to me about, well, this is what a non-binding caucus looks like, and I understand there's a lot more chaos with that, but at the same time, I felt like it's still the right thing to do, because that non-binding caucus gives you it gives people the opportunity to be able to vote their conscience, even if it is tough, while at the same time, you're not selling your soul, I guess, for something that you haven't even seen yet. That's what always offended me about the idea of the binding caucus is you're saying that if you want to join us, we'll let you play ball with us and not put you in a corner, but you have to promise you'll vote for the budget no matter what. Well, wait a second. We haven't even seen a single bill. We haven't seen a single financial statement. How can we say that that's good? So, I mean, it must have been interesting to try and do this without that stick, so to speak, of the binding caucus rule.
I think one of the great things about, although, was it a lot to hold everybody together, especially in a group that hadn't been in the majority, who are, they're governing. There was a lot of incoming new folks and a lot of folks who hadn't been committee chairs, but ultimately, in the end, and whenever we needed folks to come together, this team came together, and I couldn't be prouder of the way this group of people came together. There's many examples of that, like when we did the boys and girls sports bill, the caucus discipline on the floor was incredible. We knew what we needed to do to get that bill done. And for an entire day, 14 hours, nobody on the floor really said much because we knew that we were just being drawn into a false argument. And so the caucus discipline was amazing. And then, when it came down to the budget, ultimately we went through the process. And I think that was part of the challenge in the year before was that there wasn't a process followed. And so we ended up, we had the votes to get that budget across the floor, which I think people probably thought we probably wouldn't have the votes. I know that I heard those kind of whispers in the hallways, but ultimately when our team needed to come together, our team came together, and I couldn't be prouder of the group of people that we have. And I'm looking forward to going back next session and doing even greater things, bringing in some more, getting some more folks elected that can join us. And then making it just a little bit easier to deal with some of the issues that we do want to deal with, and hopefully our partners, if that's what we want to call them in the other body, can work alongside us, and we can work alongside the governor, and we can really get things done for Alaska.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I know it makes it a messier process for sure. I mean, a non-binding caucus definitely makes it a messier process, but at the same time, that's what was intended, and that's what 50 other states or 49 other states do, and we probably should, be moving along in the same lines. And it definitely gives people the ability, if they need to be able to vote their conscience, and I appreciate that. But it does make it harder, and that makes your job harder, which means I appreciate all the work that you did out there. And you're right, we need to be focusing on a lot of things, and the problem is it seems like we get laser focused in on one or two issues each session. And again, they suck all the oxygen in the room up, and we can't get some of the other things waylaid. I mean, whether it's the election report that we need to be, needs to be seen, or, the oil and gas thing, the gas and the cook inlet thing that we need to talk about, which we really need to talk about, or more. But there's a lot of things going on out there. So I appreciate your hard work on it. All right, we're 15 seconds out, so we're going to jump back in here, and we're going to talk about the majority, and the minority. But we're going to talk about the balance there, and how thin it is, and what does it look like going forward. Cathy Tilton is our guest. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I'm not. I'm a perfect angel. Don't let that guy fool you.
I love the commercials.
I'm a perfect angel. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show. Cathy Tilton is our guest. She's the Speaker of the House for the Alaska Legislature. And we were just talking about a little bit of a recap of last session, because we hadn't gotten a chance to talk to Cathy yet. She's a busy lady. But let's talk about the balance here, Cathy, because the balance is pretty thin. I mean, it's a majority, but not by much. So break it down for folks who are really not paying attention to this and maybe don't understand the mechanics of the legislature, because it can get confusing. If you're not like glued to this thing, you may not understand. So talk to us about the majority and what the balance is, and how close it could be to changing as we come into this next election cycle.
You bet. So everybody, I know your listeners are astute at what's going on in the legislature, but it's 40 members of the House, and it takes 21 members, the majority, to be a majority. But 21 is not a great number to land on. You're going to need a few extra folks, because folks get sick or folks have things going on. And ultimately, you want to always have those 21 votes on the floor, or it makes it a little difficult to go to the floor. So we had, when we started out this last session, we had 19 Republicans that were willing to stick together, and that, said, we stay together as a team. And that's how we bonded and said, we're not going to separate. So and then ultimately we ended up with 20 Republicans that said that they would stick together and work together. So unfortunately, that's not 21. And we were able to, to come together with the rural caucus and become the majority. So, this election, I know that people will say this is the most important election in your life, and the next election is always the most important election. I'm going to say that, and this is what I've been saying as I've been out talking to people, that one vote will make the difference. We saw that in the case of a Fairbanks legislator, and last session we saw an 8-vote win in an Anchorage legislator. So people may stand back and say, well, my vote doesn't matter, but your vote matters. It matters extremely. The thing that I see right now is one vote matters and one person matters. If in fact, this election comes kind of down the middle, there is the chance that we could end up heading in the wrong direction, which to me would be heading in a direction like our friends in the municipality. But if we get people engaged and out and voting, then, we can head in the right direction that we want to head in.
Right.
The race looks good. Everybody is working hard. The primary results, a lot of folks were really concerned because some of the primary votes numbers didn't look so great. But I feel pretty confident that the folks who didn't come in as strong in their primaries are out working really hard. A few of them have totally revamped their campaigns, and I think that we'll see some good results. So I'm really looking forward to November. Again, we have some great opportunities. A lot of it is just going to be that we have to engage conservatives, we have to engage the Christian communities, we have to engage the voters to get out and vote. So
Yeah. You downloaded a lot there on me, so let me start off the beginning. You basically had 20 Republicans who had come together, and you did end up going with the Bush Caucus, which is again four different rural legislators who said that they would come on board. But again, those are votes that you can't always count on for specific things because again, it's made up of the Democrats. But and you also had, of course, you had your lone legislator sitting off to the side. You had David Eastman, who was a Republican but refused to join the caucus, and so you've got kind of these wild cards, right, between Eastman and the rural Democrats. You really don't know which way they were going to go. That must have been kind of a difficult balancing act because again, you're always trying to count votes, but when you have a super thin majority like that, where some of the members may or may not participate, whether it's the rural caucus or Eastman, that must have been a very difficult kind of balancing act.
Well, I'm not going to lie, Michael. It is a balancing act. The one thing I will say about the rural caucus is that it was very clear where they were very clear where they were on issues. I always knew where they would go. So that is actually helpful to have, that knowledge that you know where the vote is going to go. Always very, I guess I just say that I always knew where the rural caucus would vote and which way their votes would go.
Defined, right? They had a clearly defined boundary, right? On we'll vote for this, but we won't vote for this. So you knew, which I guess with Eastman, you kind of don't know because he may take something one way or the other. So again, it kind of makes it difficult.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do here is one, in this election cycle, protect the current majority the way it is, right? And maybe potentially even try to expand it if we can. And I know that there are some races out there, and like you said, with the results of the primary, people were disappointed. But what most people don't realize is that with the open primaries and the ranked choice voting, it was essentially a straw poll. It wasn't even it's not an official thing, and I think you saw that reflected in the voter turnout. I mean, it was what 8% or something, and 4% in some areas. There were hardly any areas that was even in double digits as far as the turnout. So I don't think that should be necessarily an indicator. But now you've got an opportunity. You've got people who are running for re-election. You've got challengers. I know Eastman has a Republican challenger as well, so maybe that could be pulled forward. And some of the other candidates, some of the other Democrats have now got strong challengers. But this is an uphill battle. There was an article this morning or yesterday, I guess, in the ADN talking about the fundraising. And I mean, the legislative candidates have collectively raised almost $4.5 million this election cycle.
Yep.
But the Democrats have the spending is basically weighted very heavily in the Democrats' favor, almost 2-1. And so there's a lot of money that's going to be flung around out here in the last 3 weeks that, people have got to be smart, and these folks need your support. And some of the races are pretty important. Let's talk about some of those races that are very close. So we've got the Lucy Bauer, Kai Holland race in Laddie Shaw's old district. That's going to be a very close one. Of course, Mia Costello, who the Division of Elections just listed her as a Democrat on the voter pamphlet. In one section, she's a Republican. In one section, she's a Democrat. This is after that they put the ranked choice voting sample ballot out that had Harris on it as the number one choice. I mean, I have questions, right? I have some questions there, but I mean, that's another race that's going to be tight. What are the key races that you think, as you look at this, what are the key races for you where we may gain some ground and maybe some where we could potentially lose some ground?
Sure. I think that our biggest You just named a couple of the races, and it seems like a lot of the key races and where the candidates are taking a lot of hits, so to speak, are in the municipality of Anchorage, and a lot of those hits are coming from education. Again, I go back and say I find that interesting and a little untruthful, because honestly, Republicans have done more for education in the last year than has been done over the last 6 or 8 years. So, but Mia is a great candidate. She's an amazing campaigner. She did win her primary, and I do expect her to win the general, but that doesn't mean that you just kind of let it go. We're working hard. She's out working hard. She was outraised by her opponent. In the primary, at $144,000 to her, I mean, maybe $40,000. But the interesting thing was, if you looked at the APOC form, he spent over $60,000 to lose a primary of his own, and I don't know how much money went out in an IE. So I guess what we know is that dollars don't always equal to votes. It's not always the more dollars is the winner. Does money help? Sure. Do they have the unions backing them and the DNC doing some big things and sending lots of money? They do. But I think when it comes right down to it, we have a presidential election. We have an economy that is off the rails with the current administration. People are feeling it in their pocketbook. And so I think that brings folks out to vote here in Alaska. We also have a congressional race where we have a desire to switch out that congressional representation. I think there's lots of things on the top of the ticket that will bring people out to vote, and we just need to make sure that they vote down ballot. The other thing that I think will bring a lot of folks out to vote is going to be those ballot measures. And don't be confused by the lies. The lies that are out there with the money that's pouring in behind these ballot measures is unbelievable. But I've even heard
$5 million raised in August alone for the No on 2 campaign.
Just
$5
unbelievable.
million, yeah. All from outside. All from outside dark money, right? I mean,
and what was it about? We're going to get dark money out of elections. Well, what kind of a lie is that, right? So ballot measure 2, I've heard some people say, well, it's the reason we had the majority, and I'm going to tell you that that is totally a false narrative. We did not have the majority. Ballot measure 2 had nothing to do with the Republicans taking the majority. Republicans took the majority because we worked over the last 6 years to get out of the minority, and we band together and said we're gonna do this. It wasn't because of some crazy voting system that nobody can understand and was sold with sold a bill of goods. So I'm a strong supporter of the Yes on 2, and I hope that folks can get out there and get behind that. And if one of these issues doesn't bring folks out, or the fact that we just just the fact that you're concerned about Alaska, I don't know what else to tell them. I just want to repeat: don't believe the lies that are being spread out there. Do your research, look into stuff.
Right.
That's being said.
Absolutely. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's no on 1 and yes on 2. The ballot proposition number 1, the minimum wage, has got that poison pill of the meetings in it, which I think is the problem. Mike Schauer and I talked about that pretty extensively last week, but it's definitely problematic. But I think you're right. I think we have an opportunity here between the presidential election, the congressional election, the economy, everything else. We have a chance for a good turnout, but people can't grow weary in well-doing. As you pointed out, the Bart LeBon Catherine Dodge race in Fairbanks a couple of years ago was decided by one vote, a single vote. There's been votes up on the North Slope where it's decided by a coin toss. Don't tell me that your vote doesn't count. It can count, and it should count. Cathy, before we go here, I got about a minute. Is there a race out there where we have a chance to turn the tide a little bit to make the majority even greater? Are there seats at risk out there in the House where it could be turned from a Democrat to a Republican that people really need to be focusing on in those areas?
I have my races listed out in critical, and I think some of again, I'm going to go back to those races in the municipality of Anchorage are the races that really are going to need your help if you're somebody who has some extra time or talent or treasures or even prayers. The race with Craig Johnson, the race with Mia Costello, Stanley Wright, David Nelson. I think David has a great chance of coming back and
Against
joining
Cliff
us again.
Grow. Yeah, against Cliff Grow.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
agree. There is an
Mhm.
opportunity here. It's not just Republicans who are at risk. There are Democrats who are at risk, and we could balance it out if we just go out there, do the work, help the people out, help these candidates, volunteer your time, give a little money, do what you need to do. All right, we're coming up on the next break. Cathy Tilton is our guest, and we're going to continue with her here in just a second. We're going to talk about the vision for the future for the next session and where she would, what she would like to go. We talked about maybe there's some other things we should be focusing on. We'll see if we can get some of that out of Cathy as well. And we'll continue the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Cathy Tilton is our guest here, and we're continuing on. I look at the makeup of this majority, and I'm frustrated for you, and I'm frustrated for everybody because this should be more. And on the Senate side, and I know you're in the House, but this commentary in the Senate, where we had a majority of Republicans in the Senate from day one. This would have been an easy thing, but we let attitudes and personalities and personal grudges get in the way, and instead we fractured it and ended up with a bipartisan coalition in the House, sidelining the three most conservative members of the legislature, of the Senate rather. And that's it's so frustrating to see, and even. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but even in the House, you had Eastman did the same thing where he intentionally siloed himself out and then became kind of this wild card, because I talked to legislators and they said, well, half the time they didn't know. You said that the rural Democrats, they would vote. You knew where they stood. There was a clear line on what they would. And he was kind of, you never knew which way he was going to vote on something based on something. That makes it difficult. And in the Senate, the same kind of thing. They're going to do what they're going to do and then sideline all these things. Why can't we all just get along? Why can't we all just come together and kumbaya and do something and make something happen? I mean, it's a huge question.
It is a huge question, and it would be great if the folks that are out there making the decisions of who they're going to vote for thought about. It's hard when you're close to it day to day. I think one of the best reasons to move the legislative session to the road system is not just, there's many reasons to do it, but really so you can see the interactions that your legislator is having. I think that people would be surprised at some of the things they say. They hear some rhetoric coming from, folks, but when, your actions speak louder than your words.
Right.
So, so moving the legislative session to the road system would be, I think that's there's several reasons, and of course, I think one of the reasons is that you would be able to see your legislator in action, not just on gavel to gavel when we're in session or in a committee, but just how their everyday interactions are with folks.
Right.
That could be eye-opening for some people. Well, And my
That's
second big reason is a security issue. I think if we move the Capitol to the Mat-Su, where we all carry guns, we wouldn't have to worry about security. But that's a that's a sideline. So
right. Well, I mean, it's always been why number 2 of the charter changes is to move the
Mhm.
venue. Let's just move the legislative session onto the road system so people can go down and meet their legislators. They can participate in the debate in person, because I think there's power to that. There's power to people being in the room, looking at you while you're talking and saying, here's what our testimony was. Are you really going to vote against all these people who were standing in the room saying, because we've seen that. We've seen testimony on certain subjects be overwhelmingly, for example, against a certain subject. And then the legislators go, well, that's nice, but we really know better than you. And we're going to vote this way anyway, because everybody's on the phone. They're not in a room full of eyeballs looking at them. There's a psychological effect there as well. So, I mean, it would be nice to be able to participate directly in our form of government in that way.
yeah, and not to mention the disservice to our kids. They're not able to participate in the process. Like the Juneau kids get to come in and participate in the process. But I think if I look back, I would have loved to have my children have the opportunity to be a part of that process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, because again, this politics is a participatory sport. I hate to tell you
Right.
that. You got to participate. And if it's
Right.
so far removed from everybody that the vast majority of Alaskans can't even afford, I mean, I couldn't afford to, it's $3,000 by the time you do a round trip to Juneau for a single thing. If I had an issue, I'd have to fork over that kind of money to do it, versus if it was, if I lived in Fairbanks, I could, spend $150 on gas, drive down, drive back, or whatever. It would make more sense to me for that, but we just can't. The thing is, they don't want to be out from underneath that glass dome, right? That bubble of Juneau. They're comfortable there. We saw what happened when the governor tried to call the special session in Wasilla. Right?
We did.
They don't. There's powers that be in the legislature that don't want that.
That's right. And you talked about the other body and why can't we get along? And ultimately, if we as Republicans, we as conservatives could put some of our personal things aside and really work on issues, I think that we would really, we would get a lot done. We could storm the House and do great things. But we do have to deal with some of those. We deal with these issues with each other a lot.
Barbara is right. $150 in gas is my Mini Cooper. I guess if you're driving a Suburban, you could probably double that. But I mean, sorry. I'm just talking about my own personal experience there, Barbara. I could drive to Fairbanks on $150 in gas. All right. We're continuing on here. Cathy Tilton is our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell on YouTube, do all that stuff. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
The guy is so mean sometimes. I don't know what I did to him. Welcome back. Cathy Tilton is our guest. And we are talking about the legislative session. We're talking about the election. We've gone through all that. Cathy, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming session. We assume that the majority is going to hold together. Come on, baby, hold together. And so things are going forward. What is your vision as Speaker of the House for this next legislative session? Obviously, we know education, defined benefits, and oil and gas in the Cook Inlet are going to be 3 big issues. Yep. Is there anything else, or is that going to be? Are they going to suck up all the energy in the room on those 3 things, or is there even more? What do you got there?
Those will probably suck up all the energy if I'm going to be realistic. But I know that issues that deal with some elections reform are really important too. One of the reasons we were challenged in the last day of session is because of an elections bill that was really just cleaned up the voter rolls, which is something we know we need to do. That bill left the House. It was just a small reform bill. We know we need to do a whole lot more than that, but we wanted to, it's the art of the possible. And with the makeup of the Senate majority, we didn't want to throw a whole lot out there. Well, that bill came back a totally different bill. and the
Right. Stuffed full of
stuffed.
all new stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crammed
Yeah.
full to the point where the sponsor of the bill, Sarah Vance, well, she had to kill her own bill. She wanted to kill her own bill, but it was a committee bill, so she didn't have the opportunity to pull it. If it was a personal bill, you would have an opportunity to pull the
Right.
bill.
Right.
So that was, if you watched the last day of session, that was part of the battle. That battle was that there was a vote on that bill. It was 2020. It failed, but a motion kept being made to bring that bill back to the floor. And the changes in that bill definitely would have leaned the election towards Mary Patola, to be quite honest. And with no signatures on ballots in rural areas, and so there was. So that is something that we know we need to work on, and I know it's something that Mike Schauer, Sarah Vance kind of took the lead for us and has worked with Mike, and I know you guys have had long conversations. We know that there are issues. We need to look at some, just some reforms. I mean, we all know that the automatic voter registration for the PFD from the time that came on has been a bad thing, and that needs to go away. So we have some of those issues, and when you look at what's kind of your agenda going to be as you go into session, I think you have to also look at what is the outcome and the makeup of the legislature going to look like. Because if you're going to put a bill forward that's going to be a really good elections bill, but it's going to come back to you crammed full of a whole bunch of stuff that's so to the point that you can't pass the bill, then you have to think about that and say, well, maybe that's not the issue we work on right now.
Well, in
which
that
is
bill,
unfortunate.
yeah, I mean, that bill was pretty simple, right? It was stripped down. They had stripped
straightforward.
They had taken out every controversial bit. It basically said, we'll just clean up the voter rolls in 6 years instead of 8. We'll just speed the process up a little bit.
Yep.
It was a very simple bill. Went over there. Scott Kawasaki got it in his committee, and then they just Christmas treed that thing up to where it was, I mean, I think it went from 3 pages to 20 pages or something. I mean, it was crazy. And then sent it back and are like, here you go, take it or leave it. I mean, that's just, sometimes the arrogance of this kind of stuff is just mind-boggling. And then to keep trying to bring it back up like they're trying to get one. This goes back to the previous session where they held you hostage over the capital budget and the operating budget combined thing. I mean, that's the same kind of thing. This is the kind of behavior that we want to eliminate in the legislature.
Absolutely. I think with that, what you just brought up, the holding hostage over the combination of the capital budget and the operating budget. If you look at that vote on that budget, you'll see that I voted against that budget as a majority member who put a budget together for the operating budget. But it was the process was not a good process, and we worked really hard to make sure that this session, the process followed a timeline and that it was an actual true process. But do we have to sit down and have these kind of conversations on every single bill with our Senate partners to make
right,
sure?
because they sat on that bill, right? I mean, she turned that bill over to them weeks before. It was like to the last minute. And again, fool me once, shame on me, fool me. And this is the same kind of thing where they're going to sit on the bill. And I know the House has been passing bills back to the Senate all the time. Why do we keep falling for this kind of maneuver, right? And then having to try and stifle it and kill it at the end. It's a very frustrating process.
Right. So when you ask about what does the agenda look like for the next session, I think that you can't come out and say, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, because you're going to, if you want to be strategic and you want to get things done, you're going to need to look at what is the makeup of the entire legislature going to look like. I mean, I think overall we can say, yes, we have to deal with energy. We need to deal with cooking like gas. What are we going to do about that? I mean, and I don't think there's anybody in the legislature that doesn't feel that way. Now, the difference is, what's the solution? We're going to have different ideas on what that solution is going to look like. And But I do think that will be one of the big issues we deal with. Definitely, education is going to stay an issue in Alaska, and so that might be something else that we take a look at. And as you said, I'm sure that something along the lines on the defined benefit, whether hopefully looking at maybe a change to defined contribution with some tweaks or something like that. Those things will most likely come back. But again, if you're looking at issues with elections reform, or if you're you're looking at even crime issues, we had a hard time just getting a simple crime bill,
Right.
something where we want to stop fentanyl from coming into our state. That's easy peasy. That should be a no-brainer, right? But it wasn't. It was definitely a continued push to do that, and and I could go on and on. Trafficking and things like that in the area that go through the judiciary committees. So the question is, what does the makeup of the bodies look like before you can make a decision of what really are you going to be able to be successful in?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So it goes back to the voters.
Yeah, it goes back to the voters and to the fact that elections matter. That's 100%.
Elections matter.
I got about 3.5 minutes here, so I need a minute and a half or so on the oil or the gas issue in the Cook Inlet. I've been a little disappointed. Some of my favorite legislators have said, "Oh, we've got to finance this. We've got to put money into it. We've got to give oil credits. We've got to do all this other kind of stuff." My question is, if it makes more sense to bring the gas in over the water instead of having us pay for it, because we will pay for it, whether our bills go up or down, we are paying for it in the background with PFD cuts, because that's where that money's going to come from. Mm-hmm. What do we do? What's the answer to this in your mind? What should be the questions that we're asking?
Yeah. Thanks for that. I'm going to just come right out and say that I'm not sure that I know exactly what the answer is yet. There's some modeling on what things look like that Woods McKinsey has done. I have one of my staff used to be an analyst for Woods McKinsey. He's really looking at those kinds of things. We have Fury or Blue Crat, Fury's out there and bringing, getting out and looking at doing some exploration. And, I can know that they're looking for some credits. I honestly, Michael, I'm going to tell you, I don't know the answer right now, but I know that all of us are really looking for what that answer should be.
Yeah, no, I mean, we could spend a whole segment on this alone, because again, I mean, I agree. There's an emotional tie to using our own gas. I feel that I'd rather, we've got it. Why aren't we using it?
Absolutely.
The answer is because usually it's not economical to do so. But the question is, why should we then avoid these other questions? But it's a deeper conversation than a 2-minute soundbite. So we should revisit this sometime here in the near future, you and I, and talk about it. Final thoughts here, Kathy, down to the last 60, 90 seconds or so. Final thoughts to people out there, your exhortation to the public. What do we got?
I just want to say thanks for having me on, Michael. I really did appreciate it. Elections matter. One vote matters. One person matters. It's going to define which way our state heads. We know that right now our economy is, downward. People can't even afford to pay for groceries. On the federal level, your vote counts. We have 66 or 69 executive orders shutting Alaska down. Federal vote counts. Your vote regarding our congressman counts, because we need a congressman that's going to stand up for the state of Alaska. Your vote down ballot counts, because that is what's closest to you here in Alaska. So please, your vote counts. One vote matters. Get out and vote, and take friends. Make sure you get people out there, and let's vote yes on ballot measure 2, no on ballot measure 1.
Well, vote early, vote often is what Kathy just knows. That's where we're at. All right, Cathy Tilton, our guest. Mike Shower up next. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. Yeah, Kathy. I mean, I know that the Cook Inlet thing is a big deal, and I got to be honest, I do have questions. We saw the first report that came out. They said that they were going to put a second report out. We've never seen it. As far as where it's going, I would really like to know where it is at. I'd like to know where that report is at. Maybe as a Speaker of the House, you can poke somebody and say, put the report out to the public. But yeah, maybe we should come back and visit that after the election. If you have a few minutes, you and I can go over that and talk about that, because I think it's important. I mean, obviously, I live in the South Central area, so I'm affected by it. But I understand when the costs of living and heat. I mean, I've often said I saved $5,000 in the first 8 months when I moved from Fairbanks to the Matsu. In utilities alone. That was like getting a huge pay raise, right? And if we have to go back the other way, I'd like to know why. And I'd like to know, and I'm not just one to say throw state money at it so that my bill stays low, because we're still paying for that one way or the other. Right. So anyway, it's a deeper discussion. All right, Kathy, I wanted to give you again the final bite at the apple. Anything else that we didn't hit on? Things you want to talk about? Anything you want to clarify? The vote early, vote often thing. Whatever you want to talk about, I'll give you the floor here for a couple of minutes.
No, I really appreciate your having me on here today. I just, it is a precarious race for the majority, and I think it's really important that you, as voters and folks out there, that there's a lot of money flying around. There's a lot of you can call them untruths, but there's downright lies being thrown around. Be cautious in making decisions, ask questions. And if you know that there's something that's being said about a candidate, especially one of our candidates that is, a downright lie, bring it to the forefront. Let people know, clear it up, because, this is imperative. The state of Alaska and which way we go in this state is dependent on the voters. So we have to activate, we have to engage, we have to get out, and we have to vote.
Yep. No, I would agree. And again, I know people are frustrated. I know that there's people who are in the middle who aren't, super voters, who are in the middle, who are just like so frustrated with the us versus them and the left versus right and the Democrat. They just throw their hands up and they walk away. But if they're listening, by any chance, if they happen to be listening, your vote does matter. I mean, every single vote counts. And especially, as you said, on the down ballot. I mean, I'm happy that it's a presidential election, but to me, it doesn't really matter, because I'm focused on what's going on locally. That's where we can make the difference, right? In our cities, in our boroughs, in our state, that's where we can make the difference, and we can do that.
Yep.
So, Cathy Tilton, thank you so much for coming on board. As always, it's a pleasure to speak with you, and we'll have to do this again soon. So make sure you
I got that, Michael.
You answer my text and tell me to go to hell if I can't do it. That's fine. Just tell me to go to hell. All right, Cathy Tilton, thank you so much for coming on board.
All right, have a great day.
You bet. All right, Cathy Tilton, our guest here on the program for this Wednesday edition of the show. All right, let me get things set up here. Where are we at? We're a couple of minutes out here, so let me get Mike Shower on the line and get that squared away for you to do it. Let's go. See if we can get the phone to ring.
Your call has been forwarded.
My call has been forwarded. Let's try that again. We'll try it again.
Your call has been forwarded.
Oh man, he immediately put me in voicemail hell. What is going on with that? All right, let's try it one more time. Hello?
Your call has been forwarded.
Okay, I guess we'll give it a couple minutes and then we'll call him again, because he's not. Lord help us all. All right. Let me go back, see if there's any comments here on any of this stuff here. Shower hour of power is about to begin. People talking about the cost of heating oil. Bron says his utilities have doubled over the past few years. Frank says, I thought you got heat from gas. Is that not? Yeah, I never said I didn't benefit from it. I said I didn't want the state to spend money on it. I want it to be the fair market value of what's going on. Let's see. Just scrolling back here to see if there's anything. If the D's control the legislature, says David, defined benefits, BSA increase of 1413, minimal PFD, maybe a tax of some sort. Yeah, I think that's probably in our future for sure. Rick said, hypothetically, with today's education system, would you send a kid to school or would you homeschool? I think you know my answer on that. Because I did it before. I'm still homeschool. Move the session to the road system, says Barbara. Dunleavy can do it in his final year of his term. I would love to say that. I would love to see that happen. But again, we saw what happened when he just tried to call a special session into Wasilla. They just refused to meet there. The legislature just, again, gave him the finger, which I'll be honest with you, I never understood. Why he didn't just call the troopers out and have them shuffled up there. It would have been a thing for sure, but there you go. Okay. I didn't go to voicemail. That's a good thing.
No, it did not go to voicemail. I can hear you.
I thought you're just messing with me, man. I mean, what? It's just
yeah. After all, you never call me. You never let me know for sure.
Never
it's
call.
I'm like, I'm gonna sweat them out this morning.
You never call. You never write. You never talk about things. That's what it's all about. All right, hold the line, my friend. We'll be right back to you. The Michael Duke Show continues. Hour 2 is dead ahead. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
That's right, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FEM translator. Good morning. Good morning, my friends. How are you? Welcome to Hump Day, middle of the week. We just finished up with Cathy Tilton, who was a Speaker of the House of Representatives. We were talking with her about the balance of the majority in the House. We're talking about the elections have consequences. And we talked a little bit about what is coming up in the upcoming session and more. So if you missed that, you can go back and listen to it on the podcast, which is available wherever you find podcasts, including Spotify, Castbox, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you go to get podcasts. Just subscribe to the Michael Duke Show and you'll get it done there as well. Or you can go back and watch it on the replay on Facebook or YouTube or Rumble. Hour 2 of the big radio show for Wednesday. Of course, it is the Shower Hour of Power. That's what we've got going on here, where every week or almost every week, we try and bring on State Senator Mike Shower, who comes on board to just kind of talk, to kind of riff with us, to kind of talk about the hot issues of the day. And I thought we'd bring in some of the topics that we were talking with Cathy about, including the majorities and the balance there. What is it going to take and everything else? So let's get started with it. He's waiting in the wings. State Senator Mike Shower, our guest. He joins us on the program this morning. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Well, top of the morning to you too, laddie. I'm fine. How are you?
So you top of the morning to you, laddie. You got to do it.
Top of the morning to you.
If you're going to do it, you got to do it. Just go all in. Don't just use the words, okay? You got to do the accent and everything. Anyway, I'm sorry. You're a state senator. I shouldn't be talking to you like that. All right.
That's right. You know who I am.
Do you know
who I am?
Do you have any idea who you're talking to, boy? Anyway, Mike, I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the interview with Cathy or not, or if you were still getting your beauty rest, but some interesting conversations, because that's one of the things that I was watching and have been watching for the legislature for the last couple of years is this balance, because this is key. The balance of the legislature is key. And what I mean by that is not just the House and the Senate balancing each other out. I'm talking about inside each body is, of course, the balance of the majority versus the minority. Now, I'm not telling you anything new because, of course, in the Senate, you and Shelley Hughes and Rob Myers have been stuck in the corner with your little dunce caps on and told to shut up and sit down, you misbehaving children or whatever, by the majority. I mean, it always shocked me that, we elected a majority of Republicans into the Senate, and yet they organized, shove you guys off into the corner, and then went and played with the Democrats and put them in control of everything, which I'm still trying to shuffle out as well. But the House is facing the same thing. It's a balance, but it's a slim balance, right? We got 20, plus we've got the 4 rural caucus members, plus we've got David Eastman hanging out there in the field by himself. And it makes it there's a lot of uncertainty in some of those things. So let's talk a little bit about the balance here to begin with. And I guess we'll start off with the Senate balance. What's your hope here in this next election cycle? I know that there's some seats up for potential realignment. I know Mike Cronk is fighting hard for Click Bishop's old seat. We've got Ben Carpenter who's fighting against Jesse Bjorkman. What is your hope here as you look at the election as it sits right now with the makeup and balance in the Senate?
Well, if we just look at pure numbers, so we just do a numbers game based on personalities, commitments, who has said what they will and won't do as far as, joining with Democrats, et cetera. Just listening. I can give some numbers here. So you have Hughes, Myers, myself, that's 3. For the others coming in that have all basically said they don't like what's happening now as far as the bipartisan coalition, Democrats having majority rule when there's less of them, et cetera, like you said. So here's the races then. So you have Kaufman, who's, against the Democrats. You have the Bjorkman Carpenter race, Leslie Hajukowicz against the Kawasaki. You have Cronk versus Fletcher, Gerker versus Merrick, and Yunton Wilson. So that's 6 races. So if those races, if all of the newer people were to get elected, I mean, that the chance of that, I would think, is usually pretty slim, right? I mean, let's say that 4 or 5 or whatever, of the races, whatever. But let's just say you're asking a question on math. If all 6 of the new people were to win and come in, and then there was 3 of us, that's 9. So what you have is you would actually have a pickup of 1 Republican, would go from 11 to 12. You'd have 9, and the only ones left at that point would be Stedman, Stevens, and Giesel, who also didn't have a race this time. So what you would end up with is 9 people who are interested in a Republican majority, and aren't interested, best I can tell based on statements, et cetera, in joining a Democrat-led or Democrat bipartisan coalition. Now, Senator Stevens has said he likes it, and would be a part of it. But this is just the pure math. So if you go on with 9, it's hard for me to believe that we would not have a Republican-led dominated majority for this next 2-year session. Reason being, I can't see Senator Stedman, who is mostly concerned about the budget, that's his thing, right? The budget and spending, et cetera, would want to join with Senator Stevens and Giesel, and the 3 of them be outnumbered by 8 Democrats in a coalition. Number 1. Number 2, if they were to do that, they only have a majority of 11 right now. If the 9 were to stick together, and I know that Senator Stedman does not like those kind of tight numbers, right? One is nobody likes. I shouldn't even say Bert, because nobody likes a majority of 1 with a margin, right? Like 21 in the House or 11 in the Senate. One person holds you hostage, right? And can always swing the balance of any vote. Anything that happens, you got to go look for votes from Democrats, et cetera. So if you were to go with math and all 6 won, that's a pretty strong indication that there is a a pretty clear path forward on joining. And usually in the past, Lyman Hoffman has almost always joined with the Republican majority, which would actually put you at 12 or 13, depending on what Senator Giesel decided to do, because there's a lot of rumors that she's been working with the Democrats and they've already agreed to make her president, et cetera. So these are just the back, things that are happening. And I mean, even press people are reporting on that. I mean, I'm seeing that in the press, like Landmine and others, so with their sources. So, like I said, if you do that, that's 12 or 13 in a coalition. That's pretty strong. That's more than enough to get away from your one person holding you hostage, even two in that case. And so there's your numbers. If you start losing one or two of those races, it gets less certain, right? But I got to tell you, Michael, I mean, here's the thing. If you look at that and you go, there's, 7 or 8 Republicans coming in to this new 2-year session that want a Republican majority, it's going to be real hard for those 3 or 4 or so to go join with 8 Democrats and be outnumbered like that, because
that's what happens. Yeah, that's what'll happen is that you'll have 1 or 2 Republicans in an 8 Democrat majority. You're pretty much sidelined at that point, or you're at the whims of whatever they're doing.
Yes and no, but then this is the last part of last point I'll make on this one for the Senate is, if that was to happen, the relationships that would be sabotaged for that, the memories of people that would be so angry, the next election cycle 2 years from now, especially if we repeal ranked choice voting here in 4 weeks, you're going to see an entirely different Senate a couple of years down the road. Number one. Number two, you have 7 or 8 Republicans that stick together. Here's the thing, Michael. You are powerful enough in that case to virtually block anything they do. You can block 2/3, 3/4 stuff. You could do all these things that you can just stop it. You go, if you guys are going to play the game that way, you can become so intransient and just sit there and go, this is how certain Republicans are going to play the game. You can block virtually everything. And if the House has the same type of numbers, or there's a Republican majority in the House plus a Republican governor, they can play their games, but virtually nothing will happen. And that's kind of what happened this last session by having the House with Republican control, like the election bill, right? I mean, Sarah Vance had a clean bill. She borrowed the one I had, and then she got it through the House. The Democrats, Kawasaki and those guys claiming they freaking goobered it all up, went back to the House, and the House had to kill it. But had the House been controlled by Democrats, they would have passed it. Then I had to talk to the governor and ask Governor Dunleavy, please be a backup to veto this thing. We can't let that through. So my point is, even in those eventualities, you still have options. There's still power that you have that you can use based on the other numbers. So it's not, like all's lost. But the bad side of that, of course, is that means you're not getting anything done for 2 years, or very difficult, I should say. You might be able to squeeze some stuff out, but the Democrats aren't going to let anything good that conservatives or Republicans or others would like to see. When you have Kawasaki State Affairs Chair, Clayman the Judiciary Chair, Tobin the Education Chair, you think you're going to get, Wielechowski, Democrat Rules Chair, you think you're going to get anything through? That's the problem. So there's your number. So that's the kind of the math, if you will, I think, of the Senate for now. So that's one of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Senate, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if we can at least, and I'm okay with holding neutral, I'm okay with, if we stalemate, I think that's kind of in some ways what the founders intended. They intended it to be so difficult sometimes to pass. I mean, it should not be easy to just pass law after law after law. That was not the intent, right? I mean, that's really what the binding caucus has become almost like the rubber stamp thing, where it just became easy to do that.
Yep. It certainly was, especially regarding the budget. But yeah, I don't disagree, Michael. There's an old saying, right? Sometimes the best thing the Congress can do, or in this case, your legislature, the best thing they can do is nothing. Or the other saying that, when the legislature meets, the citizens are in danger, usually their wallet. So,
right.
And how many tens of thousands of laws on the books, what was it? Pelosi said many years ago, she's like, oh, we've all broken the law. You just don't know which one you've broken yet. I mean, that's just kind of the mentality. Right?
Well,
I agree with you.
That was the old book. There was a book that came out. I think it was John Funt that wrote the book. It was called 3 Laws a Day. Said the average American broke 3 laws a day and didn't even know it. There's so many laws on the books. I mean, at some point you're like, how do you even know? For sure.
When law enforcement can't take down the big criminal in Chicago back in the day, remember that good old movie?
Right.
But the IRS can.
Yeah.
Maybe we've lost our minds on that one.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the best thing. But I'm still hopeful that there's a path for the Senate to be controlled by Republicans. And the reason being is that it would be nice to have a House and Senate for once, since I've been there, because it's never happened, have both bodies with Republicans that are reasonably coordinated and friendly to work on some legislation like cleaning up the voter rolls, right?
Yeah.
Like ballot tracking, like, no boys and girls sports. I mean, there's some things that should be done that we could do if we had both bodies that some of us have been trying to do for the better part of a decade. And we have 2 more years of a Republican governor that has agreed on all of those topics I just mentioned that would sign the bills. So if we have a chance, that would be a great thing to try to get some of this done. And we now have, things on the books that are important to a good portion of the state of Alaska. But if we don't, who's the governor in 2 years? What's it look like?
Right,
I mean,
right.
so there's so many questions after that. It's like, I'd rather hopefully try to get some of these things done while we have a chance and we have the numbers. We'll see, but there is a path. There's a chance.
There's a path forward. We just got to figure it out. All right. Mike Shower's our guest. We just talked about the Senate. We're going to address the House majority and breakup or makeup, not breakup. We're going to break up. We're going to make up the makeup of the House and how that balance is going and his thoughts on that when we continue. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return in just a moment with State Senator Mike Shower right after these messages.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break. State Senator Mike Shower here with us right now as we go through. Sorry. So, man, Mike, I know that you were kind of prescient when you were like working with the Division of Elections, trying to get this elections, the OMB report out and all this kind of stuff. But man, it seems like they need a little house cleaning. I mean, not only did they put out a sample ballot that had the name Harris on the ballot, they marked it as number 1. And now they're calling Mia Costello a registered Democrat in the voter pamphlet. I just wanted to get your since you're such a fan of the Division of Elections right now, I just wanted to get your hot take on what's going on with that. I mean, is this all just because of ranked choice voting and everything's so confusing, or is it ineptitude, or is it intentional? I mean, I don't even know at this point.
I don't know, Mike. Maybe the best answer, my friend, is a little bit of everything of what you just said. I often have to wonder, when you start to have multiple mistakes from a government agency, remember that old commercial with the lollipop and the owl? How many licks does it take to get to the center? And then it just crunches it after number 3. How many mistakes do we have to put up with from a government agency before you start to go, it's no longer a mistake? When I look at the reporting and talk to some people that are involved, because I'm very involved in this, especially on the election side, have been for many, many years, almost since I've been there. There are people in that outside vendor, air quotes, that were hired that are rabid anti-Trump people that are very moderate or lean left of center. What a surprise, of people like the Ship Creek group and others that are all tied into this, the far left group like Northern Justice Project, Ship Creek group, who's supporting Savannah Fletcher, who she worked for the Northern Justice Project, tied in with them, and the whole thing, Michael. Look at the dots connected. Stand back from the wall, and when your nose isn't touching the wall and you back up 10 feet, you see the mosaic and go, oh, that's what's going on. I see people that I know are rabidly anti-Trump. They're left of center, even if they're Republicans or maybe they were staffers, wink, wink, that are working in these places. And then they're hired as an outside vendor. And all of a sudden, oops, we're sorry. We put Harris on the practice ballot. Oh, and put her number 1 to show people how to choose on their ballot. That was a mistake. And a long-term Republican who everybody knows is a Republican, who served for many years as a Republican House representative and then state senator, who's running as a Republican for the House again, is accidentally a Democrat. We made a mistake. Now, I'm not saying like the Division of Elections director, for example, is responsible for this. Now, you could always say the buck stops here. It's top of the, they're top of the food chain. It is their responsibility because they're in charge. But I don't think that, for example, a division of election directors go and put Harris on the ballot. We're going to sneak one by. I think what happened.
But didn't they have to sign off on it? I mean, didn't they have to go like, yeah, this looks good?
That's what I'm saying, Michael. I don't believe that, at least in the case of the Odom Harris thing, that was intentional. I'm here to tell you, I will never believe that the people, the outside vendor, knowing some of the people who are there, did not do this on purpose. What I think the problem with the division of election is they were sloppy or lazy, and they didn't catch it, and they signed off on it. And maybe even because if you think for a second that all of a sudden there's all these Republican conservatives in state government in Alaska, you'd be fooling yourself. Most of them probably lean left of center, especially in Juneau and other places. So maybe even, Michael, you might have a few ideologues left over from the Phenomenal days. Look at that was responsible and signed it off and goes, I like it. Okay, wink, wink. Sign it, send it before it's too late.
Right.
Get it out there and print it and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then our excuse will be, oh, sorry, we didn't catch it. Moving on. So, I don't know at what level a director or, a section lead or whatever is the one that signed off on it. So before I sit here and say, I know for a fact that's what happened, that's what I suspect, that it was a combination of ideologues doing this on purpose and some laziness or sloppiness in division of elections, either a lower level on purpose or sloppiness above that didn't catch it. And so, yeah, problems, my friend. That's problems.
Intention and ineptitude coming together in the perfect combination. That's what it's all. That's what it all comes down. All right, Mike Shower is our guest. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. You could share the show from wherever you're at. Only 18 people have liked the show this morning. I hope more of you will do so. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we're continuing now with State Senator Mike Shower, who is our guest today for the Shower Hour of Power. We were just talking about the makeup of the majority in the Senate, State Senate. What does it look like? Where does it go? Let's move over to the House, which is a little bit, it's a closer majority. In the Senate, it's ridiculous. You basically, like I said, the three are in the corner. But in the House, it's a closer makeup. We've got the 20 Republicans plus the Bush caucus. And then we've got the lone wolf of David Eastman out there floating around in the outside, picking and choosing what he wants to do. As you look at this, Mike, what does this, what does this all say to you? And what does it look like through your eyes as this election cycle unfolds?
Well, okay, so balance in the House. I'm sure Cathy Tilton, the Speaker, probably had some good insight because she's, daily involved in those battles. Well, I'm pretty tight with a lot of House members and relied on them this last 2 years since they were, had Republican control for things like election reform. I have a pretty good read on it. So let's start off with the balance. Like you said, you've got about 22, 23, I think, Republicans so-called in there, but then you have one of the examples would be Louis Stutes, right? Because you have Louis Stutes, David Eastman. David Eastman's off on his own. And then you have Louis Stutes, who has always bounced back and forth. She has no problem, and apparently her district doesn't care if she joins Democrats or Republicans or does whatever she does, right? So in the point of like Stutes and Eastman in this case is if you are a razor-thin majority of 20 or 21 or 22, and you have people that always either join the other side, caucus with them, vote no on everything. You can't rely on their vote for anything from the budget to just passing bills or, motions on the floor, just trying to do business. That puts you in kind of an untenable position because, like I said, I go back to Mike, if you had a majority of 21, it's kind of sort of where they were. You're every day somebody holds you hostage on doing anything from just normal housekeeping to moving bills, you name it. So the balance here becomes, it's the same thing I said in the Senate before, right? Where I said, like, for example, like Bert Stedman, but it's really anybody. doesn't want to be in a majority of 11 because you're held hostage all the time. You're either having to go find extra votes and
Right.
you're having to give something
Right.
up and you're having to make a compromise, or one person just goes, I don't like it. And then now you're stuck. You're dead in the water. So
Right.
you always want to have 12 or 13, or you want to have 22, 23, 24. That leads me into the next point. So since they can't rely on Eastman for any votes, they can't rely on Louis Stutes for any votes, or sticking together or being held hostage, they reached out to the Bush caucus. 3 Democrats, 1 Republican, who, although Thomas Baker's kind of running undeclared, based on the Bush thing and where he is, it's kind of like the Donnie Olson thing, right? If you run as a Republican,
Right, you're going to
because
get
he's
killed.
really more Republican Democrat, he's going to get crushed. So, it's a little different on the political front. But when you look at it, you had the Bush caucus. So would you have Edgman? You had, was it Edgman, McCormick, and Foster, sorry, and then
Right.
Baker. So now you have 3 Democrats who have almost always, usually, obviously caucus with the Democrats. And now you've got these Republicans that have all stuck together. You got 2 that are sitting on the outside, can't do what they want in this particular case, can't be relied upon. And you got to rely on the Bush caucus to give you enough numbers to get you past that 21. Well, what happens, Mike, when Edgman, Foster, and McCormick as Democrats go, we don't like that. We're not going to vote with you.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're stuck at 20. Going, how do they even do business? How do they even move anything? They're
Right.
having to compromise, which was the amazing balancing act I watched Speaker Tilton do, of just trying to keep a Republican-led, dominated majority functioning, was challenging, because there were times when those Democrats bucked them, and all of a sudden they're stuck with the 16 Democrats, 17 Democrats, whatever, plus those independents. Again, wink, wink, because people like Ortiz and Schrage are not independent. They're Democrats. They're funded by Democrats. They caucus with Democrats. They vote with Democrats. They hide the registration, because if they put they put Democrat, harder for them to get elected, right? I mean, just look at Schrage's things. I'm an independent. Really? Everything in your thing's Democrat, Ship Creek Group. Come on, man. Own it. Be proud of it. Just be the Democrat that you are,
Right,
because
right.
nobody's buying it anymore, right? We're getting the message out to people, Michael, in Alaska, that independent typically means Democrat. Or nonpartisan. Fletcher, same thing, right? Against Kronk up in Fairbanks. Wildly left wing from California, only been here 5 or 6 years, 7 years, something like that, on the Northern Justice Project, suing legislators, anti-resource development. Come on, man, guys, know who these people are. So back to your point of the balance of power, if you have to rely on something like the Bush caucus, you're on a razor thin edge. And so having Republicans that are going to be willing to work together and stick together is going to make a difference, because 2 things. 1, what if the Senate doesn't organize, or we don't win enough of those races, and we come back and we got another Democrat-led, majority, bipartisan coalition. If the House doesn't organize under Republicans, guess what? Now you got the entire legislature controlled by Democrats. How do you think that's going to go? Everything's going to be coming down to Dunleavy hopefully vetoing the bad stuff coming out, and there's going to be plenty of it. And the best we're going to do is have to maneuver with him to try to block things, veto them, not override the vetoes, etc. That's going to be a terrible place to be, because that whole nothing's going to happen, well, plenty's going to happen, right? But in a way that most of us in Alaska don't want, especially since we send more Republicans to the legislature. So that's one thing, right? The second thing is that if the House does organize under Republicans, then there's also a chance that maybe it makes it easier for some of the Republicans in the Senate to go, the House is the backup. So there's kind of a couple paths that can, if something was, they go, well, we're going to join with the Democrats. The House will take care of it. The House won't, so there's
Right.
that back and forth between some of the smart, savvy ones that have been around a long time on whether they really have pressure to join or not. So that's the balance, Michael. And the House is that if you don't have enough people getting elected, and let's say, we know the one up here in the Matsu, David Eastman, he has been very toxic. Most Republicans don't want to work with him.
Right.
So if you send him back, for example, and Stutes goes back, you're going to have all of a sudden a whole bunch of Republicans go, not working with them, not going to caucus with them, not going to join with them. Relationships are so sabotaged, simply not going to do it. Now you're back to, so what do? They're going to have to enlist the Bush caucus again. They're going to have to be a razor thin margin again. They're going to have a hard time passing any conservative legislation like election reform, because those couple of Democrats don't want it. So if, however, we send people back that are new and fresh, and don't have all of that baggage they're dragging with them, the more of those people that go back, the better chances are the House is going to be able to work and organize together, and then have a Republican majority that's maybe 22 or 23 that are strong enough that will stick together and will work together. And you might even at that point, Michael, you're going to have people like Bryce Edgman that doesn't want to be left out in the cold. Then they may join anyways. And the next thing you know, you got a majority with 24 or 25 people in it, 26. Right. That's happened before. But now those Democrats that are in power, trying to stick there and hold on to some type of power for the districts, they can't hold the coalition, if you will, because that's really a Republican coalition with a few extra Democrats that don't want to be left out in the cold. They can't hold them hostage.
Well,
and that number matters.
Let's
let's
talk about some of the races out there that could make a difference. I mean, you've brought Eastman up, so let's start off with him. He's got Jubilee Underwood running against him, and he, as you said, he's been a coalition of one for, I mean, I don't know how long. The inability, it seems like, to work with other people and to even know where he's voting, because I know he's got principles, right? He's got his principles that he's stated, and people know what his principles are, but it seems like nobody really know how he's going to vote on a specific bill until it hits the floor, which is something you can't really count on. And again, that working relationship has really been problematic for a lot of people. And so that's why I think Jubilee Underwood has come up to the picture, because people are getting frustrated. How important is that race in your mind as you look at this, and versus his track record?
Well, look, how a person votes is not as important to me when we're talking, because here you're talking organization and control of the bodies, right? How a person votes is not overly important, although it does matter, right? I mean, if the person, anybody, always votes no on everything, which is kind of what happens in Representative Eastman's case, then people just look at it and go, it doesn't matter. Whatever we do, he's going to vote no. And so they just kind of give up on them. They can't rely on them. They're not going to vote on them. And I don't want to say it like, well, we got to rely on somebody's yes vote, because everybody should be free and should vote how they believe is best in accordance with the Constitution, the law, what their district wants, et cetera, right? So, I mean, I try to do the same thing. I vote no plenty. But there's also times where I look at something and I go, okay, that's not dangerous. That's not what I'm not just going to vote no, right, as a matter of principle. So, and there's been times, you and I have talked about, there's been times in the past where I voted with the Democrats because I thought they were doing a better job, or what they were proposing was better than the majority of Republicans. So, anybody should be able to vote how they choose or how they think is best all the time. And so I don't really hinge this so much on the voting record per se. What I look at in this case is what I know of the dynamics in the House is that the relationships now are so toxic there regarding him that people simply won't work with him. They don't want anything to do with him. They won't caucus with him. And so if I go back to your original question, which is, well, how do we organize what's going to happen if you have a member that's a Republican that nobody will work with, that they're so angry with, has become so toxic to the organization or to the other Republicans? Well, then that's basically, you might as well have a Democrat in that seat, right? Because the point being, nobody's going to work with them. And so if nobody's going to work with them, you're already down one for the organization. So just exclude them. So now you're down at 20 or 21. You're back to that raise with them majority, because that's how tight it is across the state based on these races. So back to my same point of, like in the Senate, where new people coming in have a new, fresh look on things, know of the established relationships, et cetera, you can kind of rebuild the organization. If you have a new person in that seat in the House, then that toxic part of it coming into it's no longer at play. And people go, okay, yeah, we'll work with that one. That person can talk. That's kind of a plus one, if it makes sense, that you're putting a number in. And so that would be, well, you said you wanted to start with that one. So that's my assessment on that one. If you have a new person in that seat, I think that's important, because now you have, it would be Representative Underwood, Jubilee Underwood, you said the name. And so that would be, maybe 22 or 23 Republicans, but now one that they would work with. So that's a pure dynamic, Michael. That's combat effective or combat ineffective. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Right,
pure numbers,
right.
Not about ideology, not about whether I agree with somebody or not. I'm saying what I know of the relationships in the House are so sabotaged, so damaged, that he is no longer going to be combat effective. They just, if he gets reelected, and if people put him back there, you just might as well assume that he's going to be off on the side and not be able to do anything, because as a party of one, you're done. In a
Right.
house of 40 people, it's a party of one. You ain't got nothing.
Right.
And he's never been able to move a bill or do anything, and he's never going to. So that's just make your vote, but understand that's the dynamics of the personalities that I know of. So he basically doesn't count. So that would be one. I think, that was the first one you'd ask. What's the number?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I think then there's some other seats that can be turned. I mean, the Cliff Grow, David Nelson race, that was a close race to begin with when Grow was first elected, and there's a possibility there of that flipping that seat from D to R could definitely be a help, and that would definitely be a +1 in that regard.
Yeah, so that's definitely one. Like I said, when we're just because this is, and I know people, I hope people aren't getting mad about this because you're asking questions here, but I know people have their favorites or who they like or whatever. I'm not talking bad about anybody here, folks. So you heard me loud and clear. I'm doing a numbers game and what I know of personalities because those things matter. We're being pragmatic here and trying to figure out numbers. So we talked about Eastman, we talked about Cliff Grow versus David Nelson. David Nelson was already in the legislature for a good, solid kid, stuck with the Republicans. He's actually active military in the Guard, not active duty, but Guard. Solid kid, like David. He would do very well. Again, to come back and already has some experience. Cliff Grow just has money, of course, and one of the David Nelson's problems, like any person, is trying to campaign on base because he has Jay Barrett, right? So that gets difficult trying to be on there, but that would be a +1. So that's another +1 in the category, down one Democrat, up one Republican. And Cliff Grow, far left Democrat, no matter what they always try to sell you.
Right.
Like you look at Mia Costello's race, because we could go right into that. That's another hold a seat, right? Because that we don't want to lose it to the Democrat. Wells is trying to campaign like a conservative, this guy. I mean, dude, the lies, Michael, from Mary Patola, the no on two, the people trying to save ranked choice voting, the candidates like Wells and Fletcher and others, the lies. It just never ceases to amaze me that people believe it. Mia Costello was one of the leading advocates for victims and for repeal of SB 91 when I first got there. Her and I were the ones, you may remember, did the Rule 48 with her, myself, and Willikowski to roll John Coghill to move the repeal bill of SB 91 that he was sitting on for years in judiciary when I got there, to force it out. And Pete Kelly's like, don't you ever do this again. This is war. I'm like, well, Pete, this is what my people want. What do you want me to say? I mean, that was that battle. Here's the point. But that guy's down there saying, oh, Mia Costello hates victims. She voted to do this, that, and the other. I'm looking at the flyers. She's sending me pictures. Like, Michael, it's like nobody even, I don't want more laws, but I'm like, I just wish the people would research and realize that the lies that they are getting from people are so strong and so bad. It is so dark and malicious, and there's so much money flowing into the state from outside, left-wing billionaires and special interest groups. It's just insane. There are over $12 million now on the Save Ranked Choice voting budget.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was $8 million a week or two ago, which tells me how far behind they are. Now they're $12 million.
Yeah.
So, I know that was a little off topic. So that's, you said Eastman, Costello.
All right. Well,
Nelson,
hold your thought, because we're going to come back to this here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty based, free thinking radio.
Your mental suppository. The Michael Duke Show.
All right, Mike Shower is our guest. We're continuing. I know everybody wants to tiptoe around the tulips on this thing with Eastman, but this thing kind of pisses me off, quite honestly. I understand the guy's trying to be principled, but at some point it seems like you said, you got to work with people. And unfortunately, it's not just a vote thing. It's also it's a personality thing, and it's not working. I mean, the guy is, well, anyway, I mean, like I said, I agree with about 85% of what he believes in and what he's fighting for. I just disagree with the way that he's doing it. You got to work with people. This is not a lone wolf scenario. You got to work with 39 other people, or at least 20, 21 other people in your majority to make it work. And it's just so frustrating to see him stand on the outside and throw lob bombs and vote against that. I mean, somebody mentioned that he voted against the concierge healthcare, which is a huge deal. We should have gotten more concierge healthcare. We should have more access and better access to other healthcare options. And there's been a couple other things that he voted against the PFD when it was time to the deal because, well, the budget of the thing. And it was just like, this is so frustrating to watch. Pick your battles and make a choice. This is me personally talking, people, just so in case you know. But don't just tell me how great you're doing as a lone wolf out there. If you're not getting anything done, it's nothing but chest beating at that point. That's my personal thought on it. And it's disingenuous.
Yeah. Well, it is. And, Michael, remember, too, we're talking pragmatically here. We're not talking ideological. We're not talking philosophy or principles that we may agree on, which I think a lot of us are aligned, the 80-20 rule, at least, probably for Republicans by and large, not all, but, ballparkish, something to work, and coalesce around, right? Ideals and goals, etc. But we're talking pragmatically. If there was 25, 26, 27 Republicans like there used to be in the House and there was a supermajority, David Eastman could be there. Wouldn't matter. They wouldn't have to rely on his vote. It would never be an issue. He could lone wolf it off to the side, whatever, and it would be what it is. That's unfortunately not what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with having to pull in Bush Democrats, the Bush caucus, just to be able to have a functioning majority led by and dominated by a majority of Republicans so that the Democrats don't have power again. So when you have a couple of these, like Stutes and Eastman and others, that then matters because you can't rely on them. And the relationships, a lot of them have been sabotaged. And so you can't get the numbers to hold on to the House, even though you have a majority of Republicans. That's why I bring it up as so important. It's not about ideology or principles. It's not even necessarily about votes. It's about the reliability of that person sticking with the caucus on the bigger issues and even just daily housekeeping, Michael, moving, bills through and the different things sometimes, sometimes people get so and they become such obstacles that they even block that kind of stuff when it's that tight. And so that's why I say this kind of matters and is important. And let's clear up the record. I was at something last week. We had a school of government thing, and I was pretty disappointed. I'll be honest with you. That was probably the worst example I've seen of it, where there was exceeding bias. And we had 2 Senate candidates for a race up here in the Matsu. We had 2 House candidates sitting by, and then an Assembly candidate. And the one running that allowed the first and only candidate that was there that day, and it happened to be Representative Eastman, in over an hour to sit there and talk and do a PowerPoint presentation. All the rest of those candidates combined had less than 1 hour, and half the people had left by the time we were talking about the Senate race. I was very disappointed in that. But something was said, and I keep hearing this, about that PFD vote. And I'm here to tell you, let's just get the numbers out. Because somebody said that, actually, I think it was Representative Eastman said it, well, I didn't know if that was going to pass. Baloney. I'm here to tell you flat out, when that left, when my amendment passed and we had a full PFD plus the energy rebate, it was like 5,400 or something, or whatever it was, 5,000 plus or minus a little bit per person that year. A little bit of makeup from years past. We're never going to get there, of course, but it was a good coming out of COVID back in 2020. Was that 2021 or 2022, I guess? And it passed. And when it went to the House, fully funded, ready to go, all the House had to do is pass that sucker. It went to the governor, signed, and everybody was getting it. There were 3 individuals that voted no, and it was David Eastman, Christopher Kirka, and James Kaufman. And it got sent back, and they knew exactly what was going to happen when it failed. They needed those 3 votes, and when they voted against it, failed. It went back to the conference committee, and anybody that tries to claim ignorance is not being honest. When it goes to conference committee, now it's Stedman and Hoffman and Edgman and all those players, and what do they do? They're going to strip that down. What did they do? They stripped it down by a third or more and chopped the size of that PFD. And that was the responsibility of 3 individuals, Michael, because had they voted, or even 2 of them, I think, had voted, it was going to pass. And so I get frustrated when I hear people try to make excuses for what I did or didn't know or whatever baloney. In this particular case, that was fully funded. It left the Senate. We got there because I could count votes on the floor that day. Senator Von Imhoff was missing. And I go, we got a 10-9. I said, give me that amendment, Naresh. And he handed that sucker to me, and I'll be doggone if it didn't pass. And then the House voted it down. And there was something about there was like 340,000 of abortion funding. And I think that was the reason a couple of them used that they didn't vote, knowing that the governor was going to veto it because he said he would, knowing that the Supreme Court, of course, was going to force it to go back in anyways. The whole thing was a red herring. But right. I do want the record set straight because I get frustrated. People say, well, I didn't know this. Yes, you did.
We got it.
And yes, it was funded. And yes, you would have had it.
Here we go.
I know.
The Michael Duke Show. Okay, back with it. One final segment. State Senator Mike Shower. We ran far afield during the commercial break, and we're back now to the makeup of the legislature, the House. We were talking about some of these close races. You know, the seats we need to retain. Obviously, the Mia Costello seat would be a plus, but the Lucy Bauer and Kai Holland race is another one where we have to retain it, right? Because that's Laddie Shaw's old seat. So again, we're fighting a battle of picking up new seats, but also trying to protect the seats that are potentially could be lost.
Yeah. So there's, like I said, some of these could swing either way. You might pick up one here, you might lose one there. So I go back to Michael. I will, even with the Trump effect and the repeal of ranked choice voting, that I think is going to pull out a lot of conservatives and those that are kind of moderate or right of center this time around. I still think with the amount of money flowing into the state from dark money, the Scott Kendall crowd and the Alaskans for Better Elections and all that garbage, Northern Justice Project, keep naming them because they matter. They're bringing, like I think it was on the break, I said it, where now they're up to $12 million as opposed to $8 million for trying to stop the repeal of ranked choice voting because it kills the national narrative. People ask, why are they doing it? It has nothing to do with Alaska. It's because they're trying to save it, because if Alaska repeals it after only 4 years and we show we don't like it, all of a sudden in Idaho and Wyoming and all these other states, they're pushing it. The logical question goes, wait a minute, if it's so good, how come Alaska just repealed it? Now there's another effort afoot to repeal it in Maine, the first state to get it. So that's why it matters so much, and they're panicking, I think, because they know they're behind, but we can't let up on this one. So yes, it does matter, everyone, because if you pick up one, that's great, but if you lose another one, then you're right back to where you were. And do I see us coming in with 25 or 26 Republicans? Probably not. The reality is, Mike, the people we have been losing in the state for what outflow of migration we have been mostly your blue collar, red blooded American, oil field workers and others that love their country, veterans, et cetera, or not. They're the ones that are going to other places, Texas, Louisiana, Florida, whatever, Tennessee, you name it, somewhere down south, and not because they hate Alaska, just because jobs, right? The job market has gotten so thin here in the private sector. If you don't work for the government, good luck, right? So that's part of it. But who we're getting in are people from the left coast. Savannah Fletcher, Zach Fields, right? These are the people that are coming up here and getting into politics and doing stuff. They're from Oregon and Washington, California. Guess what? How do you think they lean politically? It's not like we're gaining good conservatives. So you're seeing a shift in demographics in Alaska, which I go back to. Powerhouses for the conservative side, like the Mat-Su, the Kenai Peninsula, East Fairbanks, North Pole, matter. And who you send matters, because if you lose even one of those seats or have somebody that's combat ineffective in one of those seats, all of a sudden the balance of power is like hanging in a real thin margin. This isn't like it was in the 90s where we had 27 Republicans and they can do whatever they want, no problem. So it really, what your point is, Michael, it really does matter. And it's really a tight margin down to 1 or 2 seats to whether or not this is going to work. And so everyone does matter. And I wrote that article, and I had one on Yes on 2 about the veterans and how they were lying flat out about military can't vote. If we repeal ranked choice voting, I'm like, you people don't know the truth of a swim up and bitch in the butt. That's an old line from the original Jaws movie. And the same thing on no, because nobody's talking about ballot measure 1, which is, I wrote an article on that, but it must read. I'm like, folks, do you see what's going on here? Like, they've got us so enamored of repeal of ranked choice voting, ballot measure 2. They snuck in ballot measure. Well, who's even talked about it? When have you heard it?
Right.
All of a sudden, everybody's like, ballot measure 1. There's a 1. Well, yeah, there's 1 because there's a 2. But who's talking about it, Michael? Who's looked at it? Where did it come in? Who was getting the signatures? I got so many questions. I can't even tell you how this one just popped up all of a sudden on there. And I read it a couple weeks ago. Go, oh my gosh, this is like, ranked choice voting 4 years ago. It's like 6 months, and we're like, we're 6 months out and this thing is gaining steam. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And we're so limited in resources, money, and time, like the left has. You just can't keep fighting him all the time, right? Because you just run out of time and money. And I started reading it. I'm like, okay, minimum wage, kind of a nothing burger. Most corporations, bigger companies are doing it. Small companies are going to struggle because they're barely getting by. Sick leave. Now they got to do that too on top of the wage. Now this is getting to be problematic because these small businesses aren't going to, you're going to run them under. And if you think the big businesses care, they'll just scoop them up like they did in COVID. They have no problem with this, just like unions. Oh, more money for more unions equals more money in the coffers, more power for union bosses. Yeah, they're all about it. Then I saw the third section, Michael, which all this is a violation of the single subject rule anyways, but the courts in Alaska don't care about that. We saw that during ranked choice voting. All of a sudden, now you got this little poison pill about no religious and political meetings. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the whole reason. Here's my point, is if you vote for ballot measure 1, if you vote yes, you better crack open your own wallet, ladies and gentlemen, because guess who's going to pay for the cost of sick leave for the employees and the increased minimum wage for these small businesses? Guess who's paying that? It could be the business owner. It's going to be you. That's right, Mr. and Mrs. Consumer, Mr. and Mrs. Alaska. Crack open those wallets, boys and girls, because they're coming after you, because guess who's got to pay that bill to keep those businesses open? Everything always gets past the consumer eventually, Michael. So there's a poison pill in there about that religious political meeting. That's lawfare. That's the Colorado Baker coming. Mark my words, a couple years down the road, the left, this is how they play the game. They don't do anything without a reason. So I guarantee that's what this is about. But enough. Back to the balance of power. So we talked about Eastman's, Costello, Stutz, Nelson. Did you have any others that were
No, I
you were
mean,
thinking of? Well, you said Lucy Bauer.
Well, I mean, I think the Kai Holland, Lucy Bauer race is another one that is right off the top of my head, that are important. And of course, the Colomb and Featherly race is another one where he's outraised her by 2-1. And I haven't always agreed with what Julie's done out there, but at the same time, she's thoughtful. And she's definitely more conservative than Featherly on this situation. So again, it's a choice of which one to, and I'd like to keep the majority. So there are a handful of races out there that are going to be critical to everything that's going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, that bottom line, the entire discussion for the last hour, that's really what it comes down to, right? Is that this is a numbers game. And, your vote matters, ladies and gentlemen. I've heard something said, a thing I saw last week, I believe said that something like 40% of Christians said they're going to sit out this election. I go, great. I said, if there's 100 million, who knows the exact number, say there's 100 million, that's 40 million Americans that are going to sit it out and not bring moral and ethical values to the ballot box. That's a problem. If they go, well, my vote doesn't matter. I go, okay, maybe if it was just you could say that, maybe. But when 1,000 or 1 million or 10 million people say the same thing, then it does matter. Then your vote does, because that many people set it out. And how many races in the state, Michael, when you think about it, we've had races in the state decided by a coin toss because they were even, by 1 vote, by 12 votes, by 72 or 75 votes, just in the last few years since I've been here. So your vote does matter, folks. And you see just a block of people with a big social circle like the Duke Show or some of these other influencers that they get a couple hundred or even 1,000 people to go vote. They swing an election easily. Ranked choice voting passed by a couple thousand votes. And the only reason it passed 4 years ago was because they scared everybody with dark money and then never told everybody that they exempted themselves from getting to keep using dark money like they're doing right now. Right. The whole thing was a scam.
Right.
Look at that
$10 million that they've got. Look at the top contributors, and it's all these outside progressive funds that are throwing
California,
money at it.
DC, something, whatever. They're all from outside the state, and all the money, what little we have, which is not even $100,000, for repealing ranked choice voting, is all from Alaskans. Yeah, almost all of it. So that's the reality. So yeah, it's tight, brother. It's going to be a really tight race. Every state matters. Think carefully. Yeah, because you don't want Democrats controlling the House. It's going to be quite a ride if they get it back again. And believe me, they're scheming. They are scheming. And you got people like Chuck Topp, who's down there against Craig Johnson. That's one you didn't mention. That's very important. Yep. I'm here to tell you. Chuck Topp goes down there. Chuck Topp joined with the Democrats, and he'll throw in with the Democrats in a heartbeat. Might as well just put Democrats as far as I'm concerned.
And again, defend and of course, defined benefits plan is top of the list. All right, less than 60 seconds. Final thoughts here, Mike, as we finish up for today.
I don't know, man. We were blowing through it pretty quick there. This is going to be a real important topic here in a month. So there's just not time to go through any more of them. But I guess my last plea, as always, Michael, until this is over, is please, folks. Michelle did it while we're sitting there. She shared your show to like 20 sites. Yes on 2. Let's repeal ranked choice voting. No on 1. There's poison pills in that for small businesses, and the private sector is going to hurt them. Please, folks, on your social media, X, whatever, get out there and share that. No on 1, yes on 2. I've got some articles I must read. You can share those, but we got to keep the message going, and we got to keep the fire burning bright, Michael, because people can't get tired in the next 4 weeks. We got to keep people on the track. Let's repeal that stupid thing. Let's move on.
All right, Mike Showers, our guest. We're out of time for today. Tomorrow, Thursday, don't know what we're going to do. We'll do something. It'll be fun. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget, you can check us out on the Common Sense Corps. Go to michaeldukeshow.com and click on Join the Corps. We'll be back with more tomorrow. I want to go back real quick on this because I was just thinking about it while you were talking. I know I wasn't listening to you for a second. I was thinking.
What?
I was thinking. I know. I was thinking about what you'd said about this forum in Matsu. So there were 4 legislators or potential legislators there for 2 hours, and how did he get up and speak for an hour and then leave you guys the dog end of an hour to split between the 3 of you? Was this an organizational thing, or what was I got to know?
There's a thing called School of Government that's been run for a couple of years up here, and I think it's been a pretty good program. It was kind of designed to get people to talk about, government and how things work and educate them. And I think that's a great idea. And Michelle and I have been to it. I've spoken at it a few times. It's held forums, and some candidate debates. So that's generally been really good. But what I noticed, what was so frustrating last week when they held it there, it's actually the King's Chapel Church, I think, in Wasilla, and so you had Representative Eastman. The other candidate didn't show up because knew that crowd, if you will, would come in and try to hammer her. That was Underwood, right? That's the word I heard. She's like, no, it's going to be like Representative Eastman's crowd. They do that, and the Pat Martins and all the others show up and just tear into one candidate. They're very personal about it, and then you may get like that Pete Peterson guy and the other really troubling ones show up they're all tied together, and so that was the first one, right? And then you had the Senate end candidates. I think it was Wilson. No, it was Yunt and Wright were there, not Wilson. He didn't show up. And then you had Holmes and McCabe. And then you had Ron Bernier. And I think that was all of them that were there. So 6 total that are running. But the person running it let Representative Eastman start. And so it was his show. And he gave a PowerPoint presentation, and he talked with a monologue for, I don't know, like 20 minutes or something or more. And then let a whole bunch of people come up and ask questions. And then he just kept on talking. And it was over an hour. Well, you got all these other candidates with actual candidates from both sides, like multiple candidates ready to go debate each other. Well, one guy gets to stand up there and have like this over-hour show to himself. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was frustrated. That's the first time I've been to one of these where I was mad. Because I'm like, this is bad. This is not good. So allow this kind of bias. And then a couple people asked questions. One asked a really good question. It's actually a liberal guy, Ivan Hodes. And he asked, he's like, hey, I noticed you're a co-moderator with this Pete Peterson guy who's a known anti-Semitic, just crazy misogynist. That guy's in trouble, right? You've seen him on here before.
Right.
And he's like, I noticed you're a co-moderator. He asked us to represent Eastman. And, I'd like to know how come you haven't disavowed anything with him or, blocked him or anything like that. And the moderator just basically shut him down and wouldn't let him answer the questions. And David, you don't have to answer that. And I'm just like, that's a valid question for people to want to know that, right? And it was that kind of thing for over an hour, Michael. And it got so bad. I've never seen this. Michelle was so mad. She got up and she was like, angry and basically taking the moderator to task and go, what are you doing? This is not fair. This is biased. And we need to move on to others. And so I think it's important that people hear that, if we're going to do these things, Michael, they need to be fair and balanced. Everybody gets a fair shot. But what you don't do is let one candidate by himself sit there with his friendly crowd for over an hour, get to just spew whatever, while you have 4 or 5 other candidates sitting in the wings waiting for an event that's scheduled to go from 7 to 9. Right. And it's like 8 something before the first other candidates even get to speak. And by the time you get to those candidates that a lot of other people were there to listen to, half the crowd has already discussed it, had a bunch of kids sitting in front of me. They were getting up and leaving. So by the time we got to these other ones, a whole bunch of the crowd had already left. So that's kind of a long answer to your short question, but it was frustrating because you had viable candidates there that needed to debate and they would not, we never even really got to them. They were rushed. They had like maybe 10 or 12 minutes to rush through a Senate debate with 2 candidates because anyway, so it was not well done, and it was frustrating, and I was not a fan. Let me put it that way.
Okay. Well, I was just curious because I've attended a ton of forums in my time, and that sounded unusual. So, all right. Well, Mike Shower, thank you so much for coming on board and being part of it. We'll see you, I guess next week, and we'll see what happens then. Thanks for being part of it today.
I will do my best to be non-committal and not let you know until the last minute.
I appreciate it. Or send me a text when you know I'm asleep. That's the other thing. That works good for me.
That'll work. I'll do that as well. See you later.
See you. Bye. All right, we're out of time for today. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget to check us out on the Common Sense Core. If you haven't done that already, you can do that over at michaeldukeshow.com, or you can just go to patreon.com and /Michael Duke Show. Either way. All right, we got to go. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.